So you want me to nominate you for temporary chair?
I can't do it because I got to present today.
Oh, well, I can't do it because I'm not going to do it, so somebody else is going to have to do it.
I'm here to discuss things when the meeting starts in 4 minutes.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we take my special permit and move it at the end. That way we get the others out of the way, and then I'll be the last one. That nobody else has to wait for me.
Right, and then you can run the meeting.
Huh?
Then you can run the meeting and still, you can run the meeting and then recuse yourself from the last one.
But then you got to get another.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you do.
No, you don't.
You got to have a chairman. You have to have a chairman because somebody has to potentially break the.
Oh, that's for the vote.
Yeah. So I can't vote.
Well, you couldn't vote anyhow.
I know, but I
So
can't.
what's the difference?
Well, I'd be biased as the chairman. I'm not getting this thing thrown out.
If you don't do the challenge, you might not get the vote.
I thought about it.
You go, you go.
So I think we're all looking at the chairman. We're all looking at the chairman.
That's fine by me.
Yeah.
That's fine by him.
Last one in.
That's fine. I've already been here longer in this meeting than the last. So
I keep going to look
I'm
at
happy about a quarter two.
my.
Thinking it was today. Or at 1:30.
You can still cheat, you know. Go like this.
Good afternoon, folks. I'd like to call the meeting to order for the Punta Gorda Isles Canal Advisory Committee. Today is August 17th, 2020. If we could do roll call. Fred Court. Jake Dye.
Present.
Fred Hannon.
Here.
Robert Nabby.
Here.
Mark, I'm sorry, I'm not going to even try to say your last name.
Kuharski here.
Kuharski, thank you very much. Paul Raffa.
Here.
Colleen Wright. Okay, our first business of the day is we have to elect a temporary chairman for today's meeting.
You have to do,
The clerk.
you have to do the flag.
Thank you very much. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Rapp. The clerk's office has asked me to ask you guys, please have members state their names when making first and second motions. It's hard for her to see who's speaking when we all have our masks on. Okay? So with that being said, are there any nominations for today's chairperson?
I'd like to nominate Paul Raffa.
Mark Kuharski, I'll second.
Okay.
That was Jake Dye made the nomination.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations? Okay, with that being said, you want to vote on it? Are you accepting?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Mr. Raff, I have to ask you to please move your seat over to the clerk's chair, please.
You okay? You okay?
You sure you want me to do this, huh? I didn't realize there was a step
Okay.
there.
Yeah, they're.
Thanks.
Yep. Should I be calling anyone?
No.
You sure?
I'm positive. Yeah. I didn't realize there was a step there.
Yeah.
Do you want to take 5 minutes?
No, I'm good.
Okay, this is going to go down in history. Whew.
And you were looking for alcohol later on. weren't you?
Yeah, it was. I told you it would be better.
The one thing she wanted me to say is don't forget to call the public comment 3 times,
Okay.
okay? I'm going to leave this with you. I'm going to need it at the very end. So I've already done roll call. Do you have this right here? Do you want this?
Yeah, I don't have the agenda.
Okay, here, I'm going to give this to you. Don't worry about my stuff. I'll just do all my stuff.
Okay.
Okay?
Sorry about the inconvenience. Next scheduled meeting will be September 21st. Will everybody be here?
Should be.
Yeah.
Big, yes.
Can we approve the minutes from June 15th?
I move that we approve the minutes from June 15th.
Mark Kuharski, seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
Again, if you could all state your name when you're placing a motion.
Can I be,
Thank you.
okay.
Does anybody have any citizens' comments? And this is for agenda items only.
Good afternoon, Kathy Miller, Canal Maintenance. For the record, we received no comments, citizens' comments for agenda items only today, just for the record. Okay.
Reports. Finance from July 2020.
So in your packets, you guys received financial reports for the past 2 months. Are there any questions, comments, concerns? No? Okay.
Aye. Jake Dye, no.
Moving on to the budget utilization report. Were there any questions or concerns with the budget utilization report? No?
Me? No?
You guys are making this easy for us today.
Trying.
Seawall replacement report. Okay.
Are we taking any, Jake Dye, are we taking any, inserting any replacements in out of order if we find one that's got a problem? Or if it's for the convenience of the city, would we take something out of order and insert it in to the schedule?
So the schedule changes often. Okay, a lot of times residents are not prepared in time for us to replace their seawall, and we've had, you got to move things around. So yeah, the schedule does change often. The work program is a work program, though. Those projects that we've identified, those are the projects that we're doing. unless we have a failure. Like this year, we had a failure on Rio Lisbo. So we had to stick that in, and that changed the schedule as well. So the schedule does change from time to time, yes. We do our best to work with the citizens. Okay, building permits. Were there any questions on the building permits?
How many did we have?
I'm sorry, I did not count
How many
them.
okay.
I'm sorry. You have a lot. Okay.
All right. Good afternoon. For the record, Gary Disher. For your capital improvement status report update, we have July and August were the same, so I'll jump over to the August document. As you can see, we've got the draft feasibility study was distributed to the members of the two boards for the seawall alternative material study, and we're looking to get, we have the comments back. We were going to give the presentation today, but based on the fact that we weren't going to have the full round of everybody here, we postponed the meeting until September. We will have that presentation next meeting. If you want to sneak peek at it, by all means, you can look at the city's YouTube channel and watch the Burnt Store meeting from last week, and that will, you're going to have a sneak peek of what was presented there. And then on to our the Ponce Inlet Widening project. That one was, as you know, we went to City Council with that one, but in relation to that one, we have the master permitting agreement, and we are working on the seawall and the riprap permitting right now. So, or at least working on the scope with the consultant. So we'll be able to kick those off here real soon. Any questions on those?
No?
All right.
Public hearing.
When you're coming down to swear or something? Yeah.
No, she did not.
Now I don't have to tell the truth.
I'm sure you can hear us, Leah. If you're down there, you're going to come down and swear us all in for the public hearings? We'll see if she heard that call.
I hear she is.
Oh, here she is. Yeah. She heard us.
All right, so anyone intending to speak in today's hearings, please stand and raise your right hand. Even if you think you might speak and you're questioning it, if you can stand and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in today's proceedings?
I do.
When you're ready to speak, step to the podium, state your name, and indicate you've been sworn. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move that we take Ccsp 14, I think it is, take it out of order and have that one as the last one on the agenda today.
You want to change from C to D?
And mainly for convenience, I have to make the presentation. It's just as less disruptive if we do that when after everybody else is finished.
No problem with that.
So it's a motion.
Yes. It's a motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
And that was, the motion was made by Jake
Dye.
Dye and Mark Forsky, seconded.
Right.
For Leah's benefit there.
First item is special permit number CCSP 12-2020.
Thank you. For the record, I'm Bob Nicola, Public Works Engineering Division. CCSP 12-2020. This application is from the owner, also the petitioner, Mikatish Miho, and the request that they presented in their application is to install an irregular shaped dock within the 45-degree angle, and also they would be installing a 4-piling boat lift. 3 of the pilings would be outside the 45-degree angle. A portion of the boat lift would also be outside, and a 2-foot by 15-foot aluminum walkway attached to the long dimension pilings. Also, a portion of that would also be outside the 45. This is at an end of canal location at 2828 Deborah Drive, and this property has 35 feet of seawall per plat, and at this end of canal location the width of the canal is approximately 115 feet wide. So per code, a boat could extend up to 30 feet waterward of the seawall, not the structure, but the boat itself. This, as you can see on the overhead, it's probably a better view, but the boat lift and the orientation, the approach orientation angle is such that it's nearly a straight-in approach down the long axis of the canal. It's oriented such that it would be relatively straight in, straight out, and is within the boat limitation lines or the berthing limits of the property. Staff has reviewed this. We feel that it does meet the 6 criteria that are listed in 66J4 of the city code. Specifically, while we looked at all 6 of the tests, we believe it would not impede safe navigation, and it does appear to be aesthetically and functionally compatible with the structures on adjoining properties. I will say that the property to the left on this view is a vacant lot. I'll pull up a couple pictures.
Is that lot 16 that you're talking about?
It would be lot
2.
Lot
To the
lot
left.
2.
To the left.
Lot 2 is.
Empty lot with a boat on the dock.
I can't see the picture.
This. You can see a lift off a little bit further to the north. This is looking again across at the end of the canal. And this maybe gives a little bit better perspective, but the lot in the background of this picture is a vacant lot. And staff does recommend favorable consideration. I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
So lot 16, they would normally approach from their dock, so that's not going to impede their access to their lift at all, correct? I mean, I don't know what the direction is. I guess they would approach from the east heading roughly west to get into their
That's Bob Nicola for the record. That does appear to be the direction that they would approach their lift. As you can see in the picture, there's no boat present. So, but based on the lift location in relation to the dock, I would think that that's how they would store their boat on the lift, so that they could use the dock to get on and off the boat.
Do we have any citizen comments?
Mike Carr from Farmer and Construction. I've been sworn. I just didn't know if you guys had any questions for me. Anymore, this is how we try to design most corners to make sure you can get in and out for access.
I've got no questions.
Perfect.
So Jake Dye, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second. Cannot be.
We have to call 3 times for input.
Is there any input from citizens on special permit CCSP 12-2020? Special permit number CCSP 12-2020. The last CCSP 12-2020.
I think we can close.
Now, Jake Dye, now I move to close the public hearing.
Do we have a second?
Second. Cannot be.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Anybody got a problem
No.
with this?
No, I don't have a problem.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve CCSP 12?
Oh,
CCSP 12, that's 2020. Jake Dye.
Second. Cannot be.
all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Next on the agenda is special permit CCSP 12-13-2020.
Okay, for the record, Bob Nicola, Public Works Engineering. In reference to CCSP 13-2020, it's been brought to staff's attention when I drafted the legal advertisement request to the clerk's office, I mistakenly put on that it would be a 2-foot wide attached aluminum walkboard, when in fact the plan and the applicant both confirmed that it is 3 feet wide. Therefore, this application needs to be re-advertised and be considered at next month's meeting. So there really no discussion on that at this point because the legal ad did not accurately portray what the application indicated.
Anybody have a problem with that?
No.
So it's really not a continuance, it
Right.
just can't be heard. So based on the board's action to move CCSP 14 to the end of the agenda, CCSP 9-2020 is a continuation from last month's meeting, and this application is to install a 10-foot wide by 19-foot long floating dock at the southern end of an existing concrete dock. The application, or the owner, is Mr. Gary Evans, who is here today. He would be installing a second boat lift on a property with less than 85 feet of seawall. So that's one aspect of the application. The other is that a portion of the floating dock, or floating lift, excuse me, would be positioned outside the 45-degree angle. So there's actually 2 parts to this application for your consideration. The subject property is at 3115 Guadalupe Drive, and again, per plat, there's 80 feet of seawall on the San Marino Canal. At last month's meeting, I know there was some discussion about how the property to the south of the subject property would access on and off their boat lift. And I do have an aerial here. I thought I did. So the subject property is here. This is 3115, and this is the property to the south. So the boat to the south would access onto their lift from the south. And I've got some pictures. Again, these were also shown and discussed at last month's meeting. This is a view on the dock behind 3115 Guadalupe. The property to the south, you can see their lift in the background. The dock box at the end of the dock, that is where the floating lift would be constructed based on favorable consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. I know there was it was a continuance, so there's been some discussion on this already, but if you have any questions, please feel free. But staff, again, does recommend favorable consideration for this application.
Mike Parr from Parr Marine. I have been sworn. I didn't know if you guys, I take it everybody recalls going over this one last time. With the floating dock on the end. I believe that had been resolved between the two neighbors. I'm not positive. Because the only side I've talked to is Gary, but he's here today, so I didn't know if you wanted to speak to him or a homeowner.
Is there any public comment on this? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
And please say your full name, please.
It's Barbara Frush, F-R-U-S-H, and I represent Jack Peters, who is his neighbor. And we spoke this morning on the phone, and the question came up, and also two neighbors south or north want to know about hurricane protection of a floating dock. Nobody seems to be cognizant of how a floating dock is secured during a hurricane, and also how it is secured with something like Irma that took all the water out of this canal. I was there, I know. And does it just sink, or if we have an abundance of water, does it come rushing back in? They want to know how it is secured for hurricane.
Mike, would you like to answer that?
Do you want me where?
Oh, you're anywhere you're comfortable, man. Mike Parr from Parr Marine. I have been sworn. For the floating dock install is two 20-foot galvanized steel pipes, and then has PVC pipes over them. So for down, those are in the ground. So if all the water went out, it would just sit on the ground, and then when the water comes in, it floats. And then for high water, the water would have to be more than 4 feet above the seawall.
And what happens?
Everybody's in trouble. I mean, at that point, everything's underwater.
Good answer.
You know. So I don't know if you guys have any other questions on how it's installed, but it's just two pipes driven into the ground.
Is that enough for a boat of the size that
Yeah,
he wants to
yeah.
put in?
The plan is a little skiff. You know, it's low profile, so really the pipe height above the cap and the boat, because it's low profile, would be about the same height. So everything would be no higher than the bumper pilings that are there. So really, view-wise works out a lot better. Is kind of what he was trying to go for. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any public comments on CCSP 092020? Does anybody have any public comments on special permit CCSP 09-2020? Does anybody have any special comments on special permit CCSP 09-2020?
Jake Dye, I move that we close public hearing.
Second, Kanabe.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
I don't see this is going to have an adverse impact with the neighbor. Looks like a pretty reasonable approach to me.
What has our position been in the past for these kind of lifts?
I'm not hearing.
Because what has our position been basically on it, the history on it? Because most of us on the board have probably, this is the first time we've seen it, so what is the history? Do we know? Of doing floating docks? Bob may be able to help us.
I guess we should be honored that somebody even thought to file for a permit for a floating dock in the first place. There are hundreds of these things around PGI that are not permitted. I'm thinking we would use the same criteria that we use on other structures, and that's, is it adversely impede? Is it going to impede the use of, the neighbor's access to it? I don't see that happening here. Whether it's a floating dock or it's a jet ski lift or three-post lift or anything else.
As I recall, one of the issues at the last meeting, and I don't know that it falls under the purview of this committee, what is the use of this? Is it personal or is it commercial? And there was an issue of parking, and I think the same lady brought up some of these issues. So while I agree it doesn't impede, and from our perspective, it's probably okay, but there are other issues that you may need to pursue in another fashion if you feel those are.
But I'm not sure, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not sure that falls under the purview of this committee
That's what
to
I'm
look
saying.
at that.
Yes, I agree. It doesn't fall. I understand your concerns, and I think you'd have a different avenue to pursue those concerns if you chose to, but from the perspective of this committee, it probably doesn't.
And I think what we were talking about and why it was continued on was for the neighbors to have gotten together and come up with a resolution to present to us that it was, Mike said, as far as you know, they just talked, one neighbor maybe, but not all that were involved. So we can't answer that, but that's something that may have to be taken up elsewhere.
Again, for the record, Bob Nicola, I put up on the screen here the most recent application that you've considered for a floating lift was at, I believe it was on El Cerrito, 2039 El Cerrito Court. This again, per code, a floating lift can be up to 19 feet long and up to 10 feet wide, but designed to hold or to have whatever watercraft's on it stored completely out of the water. This particular application was for I believe for kayaks. It's a little bit different in that then the application before you, it was a second lift on a property with less than 85 feet of seawall, which was why it came forward. But this particular one was inside the 45. And I believe, again, it was for kayaks. The lift dimensions on this are 5 by 16. And so the lift in question is in the, on this left side of the screen.
If I could.
And I can go back, I know we had one probably 3 or 4 years ago. I believe it was a perpendicular approach to the seawall, and I'm going to try to pull that one up. I think that one was outside the 45.
Yeah, that was for Colleen's. If you recall, we did her floating dock. That was more, yeah, she uses kayaks and lower profile, canoes or whatever it is.
But she was also on the 45.
Correct. It was inside the 45. Yeah, this was more in thoughts of you actually can't get any closer than 7 feet of the berthing line because it's set 7 feet off of it and you're coming in straight. So you actually get a little bit more space next to your neighbor without having a boat parked there. Following. Oh, that was at
The one I have on the screen dates back to 2016, and this was at 1610 Via Dolce Vita. Again, floating lift, 9.5 feet wide, 20 long, and on this particular property, they had 100 or have 110 feet of seawall. So the question wasn't for a second lift. The second lift would be allowed, but it extended outside the 45. As you can see, the dark shading is the floating lift. But that dates back just about 4 years ago. And that one, that one, I think that was, if I recall, there was some discussion about what it was called. It was actually, I believe, called a dock, and it by code it's a lift. So it ended up being continued, but it was approved by this board or your predecessors by a 6-0 vote after a first continuance.
Did we close the public hearing?
Yes.
We already closed the
We
public
closed
hearing?
public hearing.
Yes, we did.
Okay, yep.
So-
I mean,
So, Jake Dye, I move we approve CCSP 9. That's 220.
Fred Hannon, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Next on the agenda is a special permit, CCSP 14-2020.
Just to back up for Leah's benefit, the vote on that was 4-1,
Yes.
correct? Okay. And
Have to do the form? Is it just denied across
No,
the board?
no.
Okay.
so Leah, the CCSP 9-2020 was approved by a 4-1 vote with Mr. Koharski not voting for it. Okay, CCSP 14-2020. Again, for the record, I'm Bob Nicola, Public Works Engineering. Mr. Dye has left the dais for the record. This application is submitted by Mr. Robert Abbs, who owns property at 180 Bayshore Court. This property per plat has 85 feet of seawall. It's on a canal that's minimally 115 feet wide, just a little south of the property. It's almost like a bend in the canal, so it widens out at that point.
Sorry to interrupt. I just want to say that when we make votes, can you call it at the end, say motion carried unanimously? Or if someone's opposed, just say, 3-1, or just so it's in the record. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
Give her a minute to get back.
Long run.
Yeah. Okay, to resume, Bob Nicola, Public Works Engineering. This property is at 180 Bayshore with 85 feet of seawall. Currently, there is a lift at an existing dock. The existing dock is approximately 40 feet in length. As part of this submittal, per code, the applicant would be allowed a second boat lift without requesting a special permit. So really the permit or the application that's in front of you, although it's presented as a package to install a floating lift at either end of what he would extend in terms of extending dock both north and south, it's really, your vote would be on whether or not he could install the third boat lift. Right now, again, he only has one, but the way that this was submitted, it's more or less a package that, and I'm sure he's wanting to contract it this way to make sure that that what he's proposing is approved. But basically, on the north end of his property, he's proposing to extend his dock about 26 feet to the north. Again, it would be an angled dock at the northern end to keep that within the 45. And at that end, he would have a personal watercraft lift installed on a bumper piling that would rotate so that when the watercraft or the PWC is not in use, it could be rotated and stored above a dock to be built. And doing the same thing at the southern end, except at the southern end, instead of extending the dock 26 feet, he only would extend it 15 feet south, and again angled so that it would be within the 45-degree angle. Both lifts, as shown on here, would rotate a full 180 degrees, so the personal watercraft could be stored not only out of the water but above the dock, and then based on its positioning, it would also be outside the 40 or inside the 45-degree angle. I do have some pictures. This is a view to the south. And if any of you have been to this location, there is, beyond that sailboat that's to the south, there is a vacant lot. And I double checked that because, in looking at for navigation in and out of the slip there where the sailboat is located, it appeared that that vacant lot, I thought maybe it was owned by the city, but it's not. It's owned by a private individual, the lot that's there at the corner. So just for the record. And then this is a view to the north, standing on the dock. So again, the dock would be extended from the end of the dock in the background of this picture, or about in the middle of the picture, about 26 feet to the north and up to the 45. And this is a picture of about where I thought the property line would be, the south property line of 180 Bayshore, looking north along the canal. And again, this is just the property to the south, the sailboat that I mentioned earlier, and you know what is a vacant lot presently in the corner with no dock, no lift, nothing there. So again, what's before you is an application to do a lot of work. However, your vote would be on strictly whether or not the applicant could install both lifts as proposed. So it would be whether or not you would allow them to build the third lift as proposed as part of this plan. Staff does believe that it would meet the 6-prong test in 66J4 and does not impede safe navigation. It would be functionally compatible with what's going on currently with properties to the north and the south. So for that reason, we do recommend favorable consideration. And I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Jake Dye, Keesley Construction. I have been sworn, and I will not be voting on this special project. Just a couple other things is the applicant originally wanted a regular 4-post lift to put 2 jet skis on. Then we could easily do that inside the 45, no special permit, without a problem. The issue that we had is the sailboat to the south would have a hard time getting in and out of his dock, or he perceived that he would have a hard time getting in and out of his dock. And so in deference to that, the property owner, Mr. Abbs, wanted to know whether we could do 2 singles on the side, and that kept from interfering with the neighbor. It also keeps everything inside the 45. The PWCs will sit on the dock when they're not in use, so really doesn't have any adverse impact on anybody else. And he was being considerate to his neighbor at pretty significant expense to himself. By the way, both neighbors on both sides have provided emails of support for this permit.
Is there any other public comments on special permit Ccsp 1420? Is there any public comments on special permit Ccsp 1420? Is there any comments on special permit Ccsp 1420?
Kuharski moved to close this public comments.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So who was the second?
The second, we'll give it to Mr. Kanabi.
There you go.
I think it's a pretty elegant solution. I have no comments or questions on it.
I think this idea is something that has nothing to do with this particular case, but it's something that we have to look at in rewriting the chapters, chapter 6, because it's a situation of 3 boat lifts. in a 40, less than 85. But it is, to me, in this case, it seems that it's a more practical solution, and this is going to occur probably more and more.
Again, Bob Nicola for the record. This property does have 85 feet of seawall, so the code would permit 2 lifts. And as Mr. Dye had pointed out, the 4-piling lift that was originally proposed or reviewed, if they could have positioned that in front of or within the 45-degree angle and been able to position 2 personal watercrafts on that 4-piling lift, this would not even be before you for any kind of consideration.
Kuharski, I move that we accept Ccsp 14-2020. Is that right?
Yes.
Second, Fred Hannon.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, 4-0.
New business.
Good afternoon, I'm John Miller, and I don't think I need to be sworn for this. I'm here to present a proposal to install a security camera on a canal to monitor boat speeds and anything else that might be going on. Mr. Richard Lederer, who lives on Pompano Inlet, let me show you the picture there. This is Pompano Inlet going north and south here, yes. And the leg to the that way goes over to Isles Yacht Club. And then there are many other canals that branch off of that inlet. It's going straight in. Mr. Lederer has lived there for many, many years and has observed that the boat speeds in this canal are excessive a lot of the time, and in more recent times even getting worse because there's more activity there. We also now have jet skis coming in and even paddle boards and things like that, and canoes and kayaks. So his concern is that there's a very big danger of some sort of accident occurring. And his desire, and I understand it, I'm a boater too, that he wants to slow us down in the canals to the proper speeds. I noted as I prepared for this that this committee has reviewed up to 5 different proposals over the years for canal surveillance cameras, and each time I think the committee was generally in favor of them, but there was issues with both financing and cost of them, and also some legal issues. I'm sorry, I'm trying not to wear my glasses because it fogs them up and I can't read quite as well.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, there they go right away. As I said, you generally supported these requests in the past. There's been some outstanding legal questions about liability, but I really think that time has passed. There are many communities now that have put cameras in their city to observe what's going on, both on the water, on the shores, and on the city streets. And these cameras are not the kind that you can actually cite somebody as a result of seeing what's going on, but you can certainly have the police, and our police have agreed that they would do that, could go and talk to these people and try to find out what the issue was and slow them down. And if there were repeat instances, then they could take the situation further. I don't know what that means yet, but it is possible. This idea is becoming more and more viable because the cameras are smaller, they're self-contained. Now they don't necessarily need outside power. They have their own power, solar and batteries, rechargeable batteries, and they're much cheaper. This particular camera is under $1,500 to purchase, and there's a $20 per month phone bill where you connect the camera to a cell phone and you can observe the video through the cell phone. I and Dr. Litter are proposing that this is a pilot program at this site, and it would be installed on his property. There would be proper signage or on the property too that says, you're being surveilled at this point, so that it wouldn't be hidden from anybody. And the way this would work is still to be totally worked out, but someone would observe the issue or review the footage, video, and say there was an issue. And these cameras are so good now that they can record the name of the boat and probably the FL numbers, so that you can identify who you need to contact about the boat. I think that if this is successful as a pilot, that it could be expanded to other canals. We have 6 major inlets. This one is actually probably the 3rd busiest one in the system, behind Ponce and now Buckley's. But it would be a very good test of what is possible. I'm asking the city, actually asking this committee to give approval that this is a good idea to do, and actually to fund it if it's possible, meaning about $1,500. I think that covers about all the general comments. There's a lot of information behind it. As I mentioned, the police department is supportive of it. They can't really monitor it. I've talked to cities, the city of Venice, which now has done something similar, and they do it the same way. They can't, the police can't be sitting there monitoring it full time, but if an issue arises, it can be looked up and then checked out, and they've used their system, more so in their downtown area, to identify if there's an issue, to help in an investigation when an issue arises there. In talking with Rick Keeney, he mentioned that there might be some issues with you all funding it because it is not a repair kind of thing. But I think you're reviewing that, or will be reviewing that issue with respect to the dredging program that you want to do in Ponce, because that's not really just maintenance. It may be expanding what's there, so that I understand from Mr. Levin that that kind of language can be put in to the requirements, so that you could actually use monies for a new project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Yes.
I'd have to know a lot more about the funding part of it to even venture down that road. Jake died, by the way. But every once in a while, every couple of years, we run into a rash of boat thefts. And one year it'll be high-end fast boats. Next year, all of a sudden, outboard motors take off. So something like this might be helpful to that. I'd be interested in seeing this as a pilot program just to see how it works and what kind of information we get from it. Not necessarily putting any kind of authority behind it, but just to see how this thing would work. We've talked about doing this out at Ponce several times over the years. Mainly every time somebody's boat comes up this and it just pops up again. The question always comes up: okay, so who's going to monitor it? Who's got the authority to do something about it? But it might be interesting to see this as a pilot program, see where it would go.
Yes. Mark Kuharski, I agree with Jake from a security standpoint. I could see how this would be value, but I'm not sure. Can you actually tell how fast the boat is really going from a camera like that? Because you can't tell from looking at the wake. Every boat throws a different wake, so I don't know how they would be able to enforce speed, but I get the security part for sure.
Yeah. Well, we're all boaters, I suspect, and being on the water, you can tell when someone's going faster than they need to be. Their wake is definitely bigger. Now, certainly bigger boats have bigger wakes, but they need the speed just for steerage. So right now, the camera, I do not believe, I know it does not try to measure the speed. You'd have to look at the wake action to decide, this one is really going too fast. So you're not talking about trying to capture, to look at someone that's going, a knot or two over the limit, but someone who's really.
If it was egregious, it would be obvious. But I guess where do you draw the line? And if somebody, I don't know.
Well, the way it would handle, if you see this and you report it to the police and they look at it and say, they were going too fast, they can contact the individual and say, here's what you did, and it's obvious that you're going too fast. You can't go much beyond that. You can't say you're 3 miles or 10 miles over the speed limit, kind of thing, like on a car. But you certainly, I pretty much always tell if it's egregious or not. And I've been on his property a number of times now, and there are plenty of boats that go through there faster than they should. Often small boats.
I have a question.
Yes.
Paul Raffa. Does this get stored into a memory bank or a VCR, or how does it get stored?
Okay, this is all digital now, and it's stored in the camera itself. It has, these cameras now. It's a small camera, but it has, gigabytes worth of storage in it. And after I think it's 30 days, it would start to write over itself. So obviously, if there was an issue, you'd be looking at it long before 30 days.
My issue is it's on private property.
Okay.
And what if it gets stolen or damaged?
That's true of any camera. It's still it would be property of the city, so whatever process one goes through to deal with that. I don't think it makes any difference whether it's on private property or public property and if it gets damaged or stolen.
I'm thinking of private property because of the...
Are you thinking of what?
I'm thinking of the private property end of it, as you get a boater coming 15 miles an hour in a 5 mile an hour zone, and you go to this fellow's house, the police do, and they talk to him, said, well, where did you clock me at? And they said, well, over there's a camera. Well, that's not public property. That's private property.
I'd have to have a legal person respond to that, but I really don't think that's an issue, because what you're doing at this point is you're not trying to cite them or get a fine from them. You're just trying to identify that, yes, they did something that is inappropriate and you really should be not doing that. If it were a repeat offender, which could happen, then you might be able to take other action as time.
Fred?
Fred Annan. When we lived back in the bird section, there were a lot of speeders. I assume there still is. And if we reported to Officer Kennedy, he made pains to look the people up. We'd give him the number of the boat, and he would look them up. It's very similar to this camera in the fact that we're private people also. We don't have any law enforcement authority. So anything we say would be...
No, I was just talking about the location of the camera.
Well, it'd be the same for me standing on the property and saying, this guy is speeding by. I mean, I would assume.
Yeah, I think there's not an issue with it being on private property. You talked about damage or being stolen, that's another issue. But individuals, I mean, there are other individuals that have cameras on their property now that will use them in the same way. They will call the police and say, well, I saw this on my property. And they show them the video, and then if it warrants looking into it, the police do that. So that sort of thing already happens.
But you're also going to find that if the police tell this individual where this camera is going to get stolen because they don't want to get caught again.
Well, there's always people out there that do those sorts of things. We all have, or not we all, but there are a lot of people that have cameras already that are probably not getting stolen. The cameras are security cameras, especially the kind you use like this one and other people use in their home are not high cost kinds of things anyway, that it's worth their time to somehow sneak into a lot that in this case it's got a very narrow walkway between the houses to get back to the canal. I think it would be pretty unlikely that would happen. And it is a very public place. I mean, you look across the street, that's that private property there, that big open area. I mean, this is very, you can't quite see it, but there's an orange mark around the house that it would be sitting on. Can you mark that? You can see the orange? Yeah, that house there, that's the house where the camera would be.
Kanabi, how much, well, you'll have the gigabyte storage in the camera.
Yeah.
Are you going to be able to archive, and who would archive?
No. At this point, we're not archiving anything. It would be, the data would be overlapped after, 3-4 weeks.
So somebody would have to report an incident. Now,
Yes, not right when it happens, but within a short period of time.
I see it all the time. I'm on the canal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Major canal, and
Mm-hmm.
traffic moves at various speeds, various size of boats.
Mm-hmm.
Who is the caller of that somebody was actually speeding? Because they're supposed to be settled in the water, no wake, or minimum wake.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, it's all minimum now.
Right.
Is this going to be something that can be used day and night?
This is on 24/7. I would expect we're not going to see a whole lot at night, but there could be. It could pick up some nefarious person going into the canal system at night. And because it does take care, it does have
But is the camera capable of?
Camera can
taking-
see
at night and
yes.
Like what they call the license plate.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Jake Dye, it seems to me there's not a big downside to this. My experience is the city's general counsel is not going to let the city do something that's stupid or illegal. And I think the upside to providing a little bit of security out there is not a bad idea. And considering we haven't really tried this before, giving it a shot, playing with it, and seeing how it works seems to make some sense to me, particularly since we don't have any codes to back it up. We don't have any authority behind it right now. It's mostly a look at to see whether or not this has legs and a system like this can be of any help to us. We may look at it down the road and see that it doesn't have any value. But the first time we solve a missing boat, all of a sudden people are going to be wanting these cameras in every canal in the community. Mm-hmm. My question, I guess, maybe for Kathy is, so you've brought this. This is kind of a backwards thing. The city is bringing something to us for a proposal to fund. How does that work? Is this?
While they're getting up there, I might just mention that I first brought this to Howard Koenig, and he said, well, it seems like you get your best results first if this committee was also in favor of it. And he also thought that it was a good funding source too, but I know there might be some technical issues in doing that sort of thing.
For the record, Rick Keeney, Director of Public Works. I was going to say the same thing. Mr. Miller went to the city manager and he said to bring it to the committee and see if they supported it. And we've provided some backup material where it's been brought to you before, previous canal advisory committees.
So first I would ask for your support. A vote that way. If I don't know, Rick, whether you can speak to the funding of it or not in terms of monies.
So first of all, if this is supported by the committee, there's a lot of things that need to be worked out. And one is funding. Currently, as it stands today, the city attorney's opinion that it cannot be funded through this committee as it stands today. That doesn't mean there's not another funding source if Councilman Miller wanted to address something that's more available. I'll just go through these bullet points. The enforcement issue, Mr. Miller had addressed those with the police department. I know in speaking with the chief, they're not going to be able to issue tickets off of this because they have to witness the speeding. But as you've already discussed, it could be used for surveillance of someone's
A comment though too, if right now it's not Kennedy but Joe Trufan, if he said that if he's standing right there, he can, and it's egregious, he can cite them.
Yes,
but he has to see it.
Yes. The camera would not.
Yeah, the camera is not.
Yeah. But I think we're going
right.
I think we're going down the wrong hole, making this a speed enforcement issue. I entirely agree with Jake from a security issue.
Right.
And I would absolutely support it from that perspective. I think the whole speed thing is dubious because, and I'm just thinking of myself, if somebody came knocking on my door and said you were speeding, I'd say prove it, and they'd say show me the video. I wasn't speeding. Is there? I mean, so you kind of go down a hole that's not defensible, and even the police chief says that she can't cite anybody because. So why even? And I understand where the genesis of this was, and I don't disagree. I go through there quite frequently at legal speed, but it's dubious to me. So why make that the reason? The security to me is definitely a reason to do this. The speed thing, I think, sets up a really bad dynamic, that's all. And it's not defensible. It's really not enforceable. All you could do is go scare some people, and you're going to get into a he said, she said, and they can't do anything about it. So why go there?
That's correct.
Yeah, so from a security standpoint, I'm 100% behind it. From a speed enforcement standpoint, not at all.
But Jake, but that said, Also, it might be interesting just to see trends in our canal system, too. What's a level of, the boating tempo, and what are the speeds? Do we have an issue with boats going too fast? Do we need to get some signage out there to slow boats down? So it may give us some information that we don't have right now that could, in fact, lead to maybe safe boating down the road. Not to try and enforce a speed limit or anything like that, but just help us see what's going on and know what to do about it.
And putting the camera on public property, we'd have to work that out. There'd probably be some kind of agreement. I'm just going down the bullet points on the sheet. And then again, the administration, that'd have to be worked out through the police department. And then we talked about the funding, so that would have to be worked out. So if it got the support from this committee, then we would have to work on the bullet points listed on the agenda.
So it sounds like right now, what's on the table is, do we support this as a trial program or not? Funding's off the table right now because we don't know, we don't have the authority to commit funds or anything. We don't know how that'll work, but you're looking for us to say, are we in favor of this trial program or not? Am I correct in saying that?
Yes, that's step one. Mr. Miller's here for your support, and then if it gets that, and then it moves forward, then we would have to work out the other issues.
I do have a question still.
Sure.
Once you have the surveillance camera, you've got it's on its DVR. Who is watching this to say that there is an incident and that we have to go back and do it, and who and what would man that?
Okay, they're probably. I'm envisioning right now that the cell phone and the video would be available probably to the police department. That they would hold the cell phone. They wouldn't necessarily look at it, but they could, and they might find that that's one way for them to patrol that area, because there's only one guy and they can't see everything. So just looking at it, and you can fast forward through it so you can see it. The second would be the owner himself. He's very much into this whole issue, and if he sees something really egregious, he would call whoever has the phone and say, take a look at 11:15 today and see what you see. And the police has already agreed that they would do that sort of thing. And that would be true of anybody, but I don't think there'd be any other people other than maybe another homeowner down a little bit that might say, oh, can you check that? I really saw something I didn't like today. And they would do that. So that's how we're seeing it happening now. Again, it's a pilot, and I think that if it makes sense that there's going to be more attention looking at it sort of regularly, quickly fast forwarding through it, maybe not every hour of the day, but during busy hours and certainly on the weekends. And then again, if there is something strange going on at night, you could you'd want to just take a look at that. If there was an issue somewhere in that canal system and you're wondering what happened, you could look at it specifically. The police could look at the whole thing. Again, they could fast forward. It's not because especially at night, many of the hours there probably be nothing going on there.
I have one question. Hurricane's coming.
Yeah.
Who's responsible for taking their equipment down?
It'd be owned by the city, so they would. The city would be responsible. Again, it would be mounted on a pole, probably a 2-inch metal pole, maybe about 8 foot off the ground. The camera itself, you can't quite see a good picture of it here, but it's about 3 by 6 inches. So it doesn't have a lot of windage, and other than it could be damaged, a hurricane probably would not impact it anyway, but unless something hit it.
Any more discussion?
I think if it's used as a adjunct to the police department, then that's out of our realm to fund it. But as far as an experimental trial and surveillance type of thing to get an idea and a handle of the traffic and what's going on, that's a different issue. I think that would be a good thing to try. But from the police interaction, I don't see that.
I'm in favor of giving it a try.
Agreed. We're not looking for a motion, are we? I mean, just generally speaking,
I think we need a
we're
motion.
in favor.
I don't know if we need a motion. You're asking for consensus.
I'm asking for, do we need a motion?
I don't think you need a motion, but consensus, right? You need at least consensus of supporting it or not, but if you want to do a motion, that's great.
How about just hands? Who's in favor?
Give it a shot.
Well, okay, you can't see your hands, I'm not sure, but.
Okay.
Everybody's, why don't you give her a motion? She's got something to report,
It's-
please.
Okay.
It looks like everybody's in favor of giving it a shot.
Okay. Rick said we should have a motion.
Okay. Jake Dye, I move that we acknowledge our support for this surveillance, trial surveillance program.
Fred Hannon, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, well, thank you very much. Appreciate
you.
it.
Unfinished business.
Afternoon for the record, Gary Disher. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to postpone the seawall material methods feasibility study by Taylor Engineering until next meeting. And we'll be able to have them in there at that meeting when we have a full roster of folks. We felt that was an important enough study that we should have all hands on deck for it. So.
Right here.
And thanks to everybody that submitted their comments. That's, it's all been sent to the engineer, and they've been able to, incorporate that. And we're going to, what we've learned from the burn store comments, we're going to incorporate that as well to be able to give you guys a little bit more of a presentation as well to respond to comments. So it's going to work out great. All right.
The other unfinished business there, how do we stand on Chapter 6?
Good afternoon, for the record, Mikhail Finkel. Actually, I got a note, the city attorney is going to complete his review this week. It'll be scheduled for city council, advertised for their public hearing, their consideration in September. So we will, at your next meeting, give you a copy of what's being advertised. So.
Any comments from the committee? Make a motion, we adjourn.
So moved. Kuharski?
Second, Kanabe.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Rep, you sign that? I'll make sure we get that. Thank you. And is there an attendance thing?
Paul, you did a great job.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Well, for the job.
Are you okay?
And you can thank me for that later, Paul.
Sure what?
Yeah, we need to.
You don't want to know what he thinks.
You bounce real good.
Thanks.
Yeah, that was a little scary.
They need to put a.
I don't. But not a whole lot of people.
I would assume Key means present.
Took a sucker in unless you get down.
Well, even that. Right here. I'll give her time. She can do what she wants. Yeah.
That's a lot worse than it was, I guess.
You're a busy guy.
Because there's 3 plus the one I messed up, so there'll be 4.
Nothing broken.
Okay. Yeah, mine, the other one.
3 that are in so far.
It's a pretty simple, it's a pretty simple one too. I can't remember what that.
So if it's gonna be information gathering, that would be a different.
It's a pretty simple one though.
But you dropped it off.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That's what I thought you dropped one off, but
Yeah.
I mean, I was good until we got the objection letter, and then I looked a little closer and I thought, oh my gosh, because I put 2 feet and it's 3 feet, and it's like, ooh.
And if you would have put 3 feet and it was 2 feet, we'd have been able to have the meeting.
Yeah.
Because it was less than what was
Less
advertised.
than, yeah.
So
Exactly. As long as you're doing less than,
yeah.
Yeah.
You got caught
because
with that
they're,
little trick.
oh, you know what? Oh, no, you didn't submit that one. One on Whippoorwill with the 3 6s, 3666, that you finally got approved.
Oh, yeah,
And now, it got approved. It had 3 pilings outside, and the neighbor didn't like it, and it was back and forth. He pulled it in. There were 2 pilings outside the 45.